Where do black people in the US really come from? No, it's not just one or two places. There's a whole global migration story behind it. And trust me, it's wilder than you think. In this video, where do black people in the US really come from? Top 10 countries revealed. We're diving into the top countries of origin for black immigrants in America, and some of them might shock you. Let's be real, when people think of black Americans, they often assume a single origin story. But the black diaspora is as complex as a 10-part Netflix docuseries. Except no one's talking about it enough. From centuries of immigration trends to modern waves of movement, black communities in the US have been shaped by global migration, social issues, and multiculturalism in America in ways that will blow your mind. So if you're ready to uncover the truth about where black people in the United States come from, stick around. You won't just learn facts, you'll gain a whole new perspective on US immigration, international black communities, and the history that shaped today's diverse America. Hit that like and subscribe button because this one is too good to miss. Number 10. Somalia. Alright, let's talk about Somalia, because if you thought you had a rough day, try surviving a decades-long civil war, pirate invasions, and some of the most extreme droughts on Earth, and still managing to make it big in America. Now that's resilience. With around 98,741 Somali immigrants in the US, making up about 2% of the black immigrant population, these folks didn't just come to the States. They came, saw, and conquered. Especially in places like Minnesota, where they've built one of the most vibrant Somali communities outside of Africa. Ever been to a Somali restaurant in Minneapolis? If not, you're missing out on some seriously flavorful sambusas and mind-blowing spiced tea. But let's back up. Why did so many Somalis migrate to the US? Well, since the early 1990s, Somalia has been through one crisis after another. From civil war to political instability, making life there, let's just say, less than ideal. The US, being one of the largest refugee resettlement destinations in the world, became a natural landing spot. By the 2000s, Somali refugees were arriving by the thousands, rebuilding their lives from scratch in cities like Columbus, Seattle, and San Diego. And let's be clear, these folks didn't just sit back and chill. No, Somalis got to work. Entrepreneurship is practically in their DNA. The Somali business scene in America is booming, with small businesses, ride-share drivers, and real estate investors making waves. Ever noticed how Somalis seem to dominate the trucking industry? That's because they own a significant share of transportation businesses, helping keep America moving, literally. And let's not forget politics. Somalis have entered the political arena too. Ever heard of Ilhan Omar? That's right, the first Somali American elected to the US Congress. Talk about making an impact. So let me ask you, when was the last time you bounced back from adversity like that? Somalia's immigrant story is one of tenacity, ambition, and a whole lot of hustle. And with their numbers growing, they're not just blending into American society, they're reshaping it in bold, unapologetic ways. Stick around, because we're just getting started. The next country on this list? Oh, it's got a story you won't believe. Number 9. Kenya. If you think you know hustle, let me introduce you to Kenyans. Because these folks don't just work hard, they make grind mode look like an Olympic event. And honestly, it makes sense. This is the country that dominates long-distance running like it's a birthright. You ever tried running for the bus and felt like you were dying? Meanwhile, Kenyans are out here setting marathon records like it's a casual morning jog. Now let's talk numbers. Approximately 134,270 Kenyans call the US home, making up about 3% of the black immigrant population. But unlike some immigrant groups who cluster in one major city, Kenyans have taken the Hakuna Matata approach and spread out everywhere, from Texas to California to Massachusetts. Basically, if there's an opportunity, you'll find a Kenyan there making moves. So how did Kenyans end up in the US? Well, for starters, Kenya has one of the best education systems in Africa. It produces some of the most highly skilled professionals, and many come to the US to pursue advanced degrees. Ever met a Kenyan engineer, doctor, or professor? Of course you have. Kenyans are among the most educated black immigrant groups in America, with a significant number holding college degrees. In fact, almost 40% of Kenyan immigrants in the US have at least a bachelor's degree, compared to about 33% of the US population. And if they're not busy getting degrees, they're out here starting businesses. Kenyans don't believe in waiting for opportunities. They create them. From tech startups to African restaurants serving up authentic nyama choma, grilled meat so good it should be illegal, Kenyans are building wealth and communities at an impressive rate. Oh, and let's not forget their political ambitions. Ever heard of Barack Obama? Yeah, his father was Kenyan. That's right, the first black US president literally had Kenyan blood running through his veins. So if you ever meet a Kenyan and they casually mention that their country produced an American president, just nod and let them have their moment. So let me ask you, what's stopping you from leveling up like these guys? Because Kenyans came, saw, and turned the American dream into their personal relay race. And trust me, they're not slowing down anytime soon. Number 8. Guyana. Alright, let's clear something up right away. Guyana is in South America. Yes, you heard that right. It's right there, sandwiched between Venezuela, Brazil, and Suriname, chilling on the northern coast. But ask any Guyanese and they'll tell you straight up, we Caribbean, not South American. And honestly, with their accents, food, and culture, you'd swear they were neighbors with Jamaica instead of the Amazon rainforest. Now let's talk numbers. About 135,059 Guyanese immigrants call the U.S. home, making up roughly 3% of the black immigrant population. And let me tell you, if you've ever met a Guyanese person, you know they didn't just come to America to blend in. Guyanese people bring the vibes, the energy, and an unshakable love for a good cook-up rice and pepper pot. If you don't know what that is, go find a Guyanese friend, ASAP. But why did so many Guyanese migrate to the U.S.? Well, Guyana has had its fair share of economic struggles. The country went through waves of political instability in the 70s and 80s, pushing many to seek better opportunities abroad. And where did they go? Straight to New York. Seriously, if you walk through Queens or Brooklyn, you're bound to run into a Guyanese-owned bakery, restaurant, or grocery store. Ever been to Little Guyana in Richmond Hill, Queens? It's basically Guyana with subway access. And let's not forget, Guyanese people are hustlers. They didn't just migrate, they took over entire industries. Many work in healthcare, education, and government jobs. Ever met a Guyanese nurse? Of course you have, because there's a high chance the person taking your blood pressure is Guyanese and already planning how to open a business on the side. And speaking of success, Guyanese immigrants have some of the highest homeownership rates among Caribbean immigrants in the U.S. These folks aren't here to play, they're here to build, invest, and secure generational wealth. So let me ask you, how does a tiny country with a population smaller than some U.S. cities manage to make such a big impact in America? Simple. Guyana may be small, but its people think big. And if you don't believe me, just wait until you hear what the next country on our list has been up to. Number 7. Trinidad and Tobago. You ever met a Trini who wasn't the life of the party? Exactly. It's like they're born with rhythm, a plate of doubles in one hand, and a strong opinion on why their carnival is the best in the world. Disagree? Try saying that out loud at a Trini party and see how fast you get lectured on soca history. Now let's get to the numbers. Approximately 184,767 Trinidadians and Tobagonians, yes, they say the full name with pride, live in the U.S., making up about 4% of the black immigrant population. And where did most of them settle? New York, Florida, and Texas. Basically anywhere that's warm or has a good party scene. But don't get it twisted, Trinis didn't come to America just to lime. That's Trini slang for chilling. They came, they saw, and they took over multiple industries. Healthcare? Check. Government jobs? Check. Small businesses? Double check. Ever met a Trini nurse? Of course you have. They probably gave you a side eye while telling you to drink some ginger tea instead of taking meds. And let's talk about the economy for a second. Trinidad and Tobago is one of the wealthiest Caribbean nations thanks to its oil and gas reserves, but that didn't stop people from migrating. Why? Because while oil money stays in the country, opportunities don't always trickle down. So thousands of Trinis packed their bags, probably with some homemade pepper sauce, and made their way to the U.S. in search of better-paying jobs and a different kind of hustle. Oh, and let's not forget, Trinis don't just work hard, they play hard. Ever been to a Caribbean festival in America? Chances are the person on the biggest carnival float waving the largest flag is 100% Trini. Soca music? They invented it. Steel pan? Also them. Basically, with what Trinidad and Tobago, Caribbean culture in the US would be missing half its soundtrack. So, next time you hear someone randomly shouting, "We jammin' still," just know there's a Trini nearby and they're about to remind you that their country is small, but their impact is massive. Number 6. Ghana. Ghanaians don't play when it comes to education, culture, or proving to you that their jollof rice is superior to Nigeria's. Go ahead, start that debate and watch your Nigerian and Ghanaian friends turn into rival historians with PowerPoint slides. But let's get to the facts. Around 186,244 Ghanaians live in the US, making up 4% of the black immigrant population. And let's be honest, if you meet a Ghanaian in America, they're probably either a doctor, an engineer, or someone's boss. Why? Because Ghanaians are among the most educated immigrant groups in the US. According to research, more than 40% of Ghanaian and immigrants have at least a bachelor's degree, making them one of the most academically accomplished African communities in America. Now, how did so many Ghanaians end up here? Well, Ghana has been sending scholars and professionals abroad since the 1960s, but the major waves of immigration came in the 1980s and 90s. Political instability, economic struggles, and, let's be real, the pursuit of that American dream bag led many Ghanaians to settle in cities like New York, Chicago, and Washington, D.C. But here's the thing. Ghanaians aren't just working in high-paying jobs, they're creating generational wealth. Ever heard of Susu? It's a traditional savings system where people pool money together to help each other out. So while you're debating whether to buy that overpriced coffee every morning, a Ghanaian is out here stacking their Susu money to open a business. And let's talk about culture. Have you noticed how every black celebrity suddenly wants to return to Ghana and find their roots? Ghana is basically the VIP lounge of African heritage, and its Year of Return campaign in 2019 brought in over 1 million tourists, including people like Steve Harvey, Ludacris, and even Cardi B. Yes, she learned how to say "ee" like a proper Ghanaian auntie. So next time you meet a Ghanaian in the US, don't just ask them where they're from. Ask them what degrees they have, what businesses they run, and if they can finally admit Nigerian jollof is just as good. But be prepared, because that argument might never end. Hold up. Before we dive into the next country, let's do a quick check. Are you enjoying this deep dive into where black immigrants in the US are really coming from? If so, make sure to hit that like button. It helps more people discover these untold stories. And if you haven't already, subscribe to Virtual Travel by Brian for more eye-opening content on global migration, culture, and history. Trust me, you don't want to miss what's coming next. Now, back to the list. Number 5. Dominican Republic. Try telling a Dominican they're not black and watch their facial expressions go through 5 different emotions in under 10 seconds. It's complicated, okay? The Dominican Republic sits at the unique crossroads of African, Spanish, and Taino heritage, and Dominicans wear that history like a badge of honor. Just don't expect them to break it all down in one conversation. Now let's talk numbers. Approximately 206,716 Dominicans have made the US their home, making up 4% of the black immigrant population. And where did most of them land? New York City. In fact, if you've ever walked through Washington Heights or the Bronx and didn't hear at least 5 people yelling "Dímelo" across the street, you might need your hearing checked. But why did so many Dominicans move to the US? 2 words: economic opportunity. While the DR is known for its beautiful beaches, baseball legends, and bachata, life there hasn't always been easy. Political instability and financial struggles, especially in the 20th century, pushed thousands of Dominicans to chase the American dream, often while sending money back home. Seriously, Dominican immigrants send over $8 billion in remittances back to their families every year. That's billionaire energy right there. And speaking of energy, Dominicans don't just work hard, they grind. Ever met a Dominican who wasn't juggling at least 3 different hustles? They're running bodegas, driving Ubers, working in construction, and somehow still finding time to hit the club on a Tuesday night. No idea how they do it, but respect. Then there's baseball. The Dominican Republic is basically a Major League Baseball factory. Roughly 10% of all MLB players are Dominican, and names like Pedro Martinez, David Ortiz, and Juan Soto are proof that this little island breeds legends. So, let's get one thing straight. Dominicans didn't just move to America, they brought their entire culture with them. From merengue blasting through the streets of NYC to the endless Pero-like debates on whether Mongo or Mofongo reigns supreme, Dominicans have made their mark in ways that can't be ignored. Number 4. Ethiopia. Ethiopians don't just show up in America. They arrive with 1,000 years of royal confidence, an unmatched work ethic, and an entire cuisine that'll have you rethinking your life choices after one bite of injera. Ever had Ethiopian coffee? That's not just caffeine. It's a whole cultural experience. Forget your regular Starbucks run, because Ethiopians were brewing up the finest coffee literally before most of the world knew what coffee was. Now, let's look at the numbers. About 262,550 Ethiopians live in the U.S., making up 6% of the black immigrant population. And while they're spread across the country, Washington, D.C. is basically Ethiopian HQ. In fact, D.C. has the largest Ethiopian community outside of Ethiopia itself. So if you ever find yourself walking through D.C. and suddenly get hit with the aroma of freshly roasted coffee and spiced stews, congratulations, you've entered Little Ethiopia. So how did so many Ethiopians end up here? Well, Ethiopia is the only African country that was never colonized. But that doesn't mean it's had an easy ride. Political turmoil, military rule, and economic struggles in the late 20th century led to waves of Ethiopian migration, particularly in the 1980s and 90s. Many Ethiopians came to the U.S. through refugee programs or education opportunities, and let's just say, they wasted no time making moves. Ethiopians don't believe in slacking. This is a community built on hard work, discipline, and a deep respect for education. Walk into any hospital, government office, or IT company, and there's a good chance an Ethiopian is running things behind the scenes. Studies show that Ethiopian immigrants have some of the highest college graduation rates among African communities in the U.S. And let's not forget business. Ethiopians own thousands of businesses across America, from restaurants and coffee shops to real estate and tech companies. Ever heard of Whole Foods? The guy who started it, John Mackey, was inspired by Ethiopian food culture and the idea of communal dining. That's right, Ethiopians didn't just bring their food, they low-key influenced the organic food movement. So, what's the lesson here? Never underestimate an Ethiopian with a plan. Whether it's dominating the marathon scene, opening a successful business, or turning DC into a second Addis Ababa, Ethiopians are proof that hard work, resilience, and a little bit of Berber spice go a long way. And if you think that's impressive, just wait until you see which country takes the number 3 spot. Number 3. Nigeria. You ever met a Nigerian who wasn't proud, ambitious, and slightly convinced they're better than you? No? That's because it doesn't exist. Nigerians don't just come to America, they arrive with a mission, a 5-year plan, and a backup hustle just in case the first 2 don't work out. Now, let's talk numbers. Approximately 391,195 Nigerians live in the U.S., making up 8% of the black immigrant population. And let me tell you, that number might not seem huge, but the impact Nigerians have? Massive. Let's start with education. Nigerians take schooling so seriously, you'd think there was a global competition for most degrees in a household. Over 60% of Nigerian immigrants have at least a bachelor's degree, one of the highest rates of any immigrant group in America. Medicine, law, engineering? Pick a high-paying profession and you'll find Nigerians running it. And if they're not in corporate jobs, they're in business, because waiting for a paycheck isn't always the Nigerian way. From real estate moguls to tech entrepreneurs, Nigerians believe in multiple streams of income. Ever heard of Chinedu Echeruo? He's the Nigerian-American who created Hopstop, the transit navigation app that Apple bought for a fortune. That's right, while some people are waiting for opportunities, Nigerians are out here creating billion-dollar ideas. Then there's entertainment. Nigerian culture has taken over the world. Afrobeats is everywhere, from Burna Boy shutting down Madison Square Garden to Wizkid collabing with Beyoncé. Nollywood, Nigeria's film industry, is the second largest in the world, churning out more movies than Hollywood. So if you thought Nigerian influence stopped at academics and business, think again. And of course, we can't talk about Nigerians without mentioning their confidence. A Nigerian will enter a room like they own the place, even if they just got there. But honestly, with their track record of success in America, they might not be wrong. So next time you meet a Nigerian, ask them how many degrees they have, what side business they're running, and if they think jollof rice is better than Ghana's. Just be ready, because that last question might start a never-ending debate. Number 2, Haiti. You think resilience is waking up early on Monday after a long weekend? Try being Haitian. This is the country that literally fought its way to independence in 1804, becoming the first black republic in the world and the only successful slave rebellion to overthrow colonial rule. If that's not legendary, I don't know what is. Fast forward to today, and Haitians are still making history, just on a different battlefield. Around 672,565 Haitians live in the U.S., making up a whopping 14% of the black immigrant population. That means if you've ever been to Florida, New York, or Massachusetts, you've definitely met a Haitian, or at least heard compa music blasting from somewhere. So, why did so many Haitians move to the U.S.? Well, let's just say life in Haiti hasn't exactly been smooth sailing. Political instability, natural disasters. Haiti has been hit by more earthquakes and hurricanes than any country deserves, and economic challenges have pushed many to seek opportunities abroad. And when Haitians migrate, they don't just survive, they thrive. Ever noticed how many Haitians work in healthcare, education, and government? More than 40% of Haitian immigrants in the U.S. work in essential industries, meaning they were literally holding America together during the pandemic. And if you've ever been treated by a Haitian nurse, you already know. They don't play. They'll take care of you, but if you act up, they'll give you that look that feels like a parental warning. And let's talk hustle. Haitians are among the most hardworking and entrepreneurial immigrants in the U.S. Don't be surprised if the person running your local restaurant, driving your Uber, and running a real estate business on the side is the same Haitian. Because these folks believe in multiple streams of income. Culturally, Haitians have given America flavor, energy, and a whole lot of pride. From Wyclef Jean to Toussaint Louverture's legacy inspiring black liberation movements, Haiti's influence runs deep. And let's not forget the food: griot, pickles, and soup joumou, which is literally recognized by UNESCO as a World Heritage dish. If you haven't had Haitian food yet, fix your life immediately. So let me ask you, what other country can say it started the first successful black revolution and has some of the best nurses, entrepreneurs, and culture in America today? That's Haiti for you. Number 1. Jamaica. You ever notice how Jamaicans show up everywhere? It doesn't matter if you're in New York, London, or some random town in Nebraska. There's a high chance you'll find a Jamaican restaurant, a taxi driver blasting reggae, or at least one person who claims they're a little bit Jamaican. And let's be real, Jamaicans don't just exist in America, they make America more interesting. With approximately 759,356 Jamaican immigrants, they make up 16% of the black immigrant population, making them the largest black immigrant group in the U.S. So how did so many Jamaicans end up here? Well, blame it on the hustle. Jamaica, while rich in culture and natural beauty, has had its share of economic struggles, pushing many of its people to seek opportunities abroad, mostly in the US, the UK, and Canada. Immigration from Jamaica to the US picked up in the 1960s and never slowed down. And when Jamaicans arrive, oh, they don't come to play. Ever met a Jamaican with just one job? Exactly. Jamaicans are some of the hardest working people on the planet. Whether it's running businesses, working in healthcare, or turning their side hustles into full-blown empires, they're always on the move. Even in retirement, they'll tell you they're taking it easy while somehow running a farm, a shop, and a taxi service. And let's not even get started on sports. Jamaicans don't just run, they dominate. Ever heard of Usain Bolt, the fastest man alive? Of course you have. Jamaica produces world-class sprinters like it's a national industry. And if running isn't enough, they also gave the world bobsledding in a tropical country. If that's not legendary, I don't know what is. Culturally, Jamaica is unmatched. Reggae, dancehall, jerk chicken, patties, red stripe beer, Bob Marley, Sean Paul, Shaggy. The list of global Jamaican influences is longer than a patois-filled voicemail from your auntie. And speaking of influence, Jamaicans don't just make waves in music and sports, they make history. Ever heard of Colin Powell, the first black U.S. Secretary of State? Yep, Jamaican parents. Kamala Harris, her father is Jamaican. Even in politics, Jamaicans leave their mark. So what's the takeaway here? Jamaicans don't just immigrate, they elevate. Their impact on black culture in America is undeniable, and with their unapologetic confidence, relentless work ethic, and world-class talent, their influence will only keep growing. And there you have it. The top 10 countries where black people in the US are coming from. But don't go anywhere just yet. If you love this video, make sure to click on the end screen for more insightful content on immigration, global black culture, and the untold stories shaping America. See you in the next one.